Abigail, the woman who stopped a disaster. What if the most powerful person in the room is not the loudest person? What if God can use wisdom to stop what anger is about to destroy? Abigail's story in 1 Samuel 25 teaches us something powerful about wisdom, courage, and trusting God. Abigail was married to a man named Nabal. The Bible describes Abigail as intelligent and beautiful, while Nabal was harsh and foolish. David and his men had protected Nabal's shepherds and his property in the wilderness. When David needed food, he sent messengers to ask Nabal for help. But Nabal responded with disrespect. He basically said, "Who is David?" Nabal refused to recognize David's authority or remember the good David had done. David became angry. He decided to take matters into his own hands. And David was preparing to attack Nabal and his household. But then Abigail heard what was happening. Here is where the story becomes powerful. Abigail did not ignore the problem. She did not make excuses for Nabal. She did not respond to anger with more anger. Instead, she acted quickly and wisely. She gathered food and went to meet David. When Abigail saw David, she humbled herself before him. Then she spoke with extraordinary wisdom. She reminded David that God had called him to something greater than revenge. She essentially told David that he should not carry unnecessary guilt because of Nabal's foolishness. Then Abigail said something remarkable. She reminded David that God was going to establish his future. In other words, Abigail was saying, "David, you don't have to destroy someone because God has already promised to take care of your future." That message is still relevant today. Sometimes we become angry because we think we have to defend ourselves. We think we have to prove ourselves. We think we have to make someone pay. But Abigail's wisdom teaches us something different. You don't have to destroy someone else's life to protect your own future. God is capable of defending you. God is capable of opening doors. God is capable of bringing justice. And sometimes trusting God means refusing to become the person your anger wants you to become. Think about David. David had already been anointed to become king. His future was in God's hands, but one angry decision could have damaged his character and his testimony. Abigail helped David see beyond the moment. That's what wisdom does. Wisdom helps you see beyond what you feel right now. Anger says, react immediately. Wisdom says, wait and seek God. Anger says, make them regret it. Wisdom says, let God handle what belongs to God. Anger says, prove yourself. Wisdom says, you know who God has called you to be. Abigail also teaches us that courage does not always look aggressive. Sometimes courage looks like walking into a difficult situation and bringing peace. Sometimes courage means speaking truth when everyone else is afraid. Sometimes courage means stopping a conflict instead of winning it. Abigail had no army behind her. She had no political position. She simply had wisdom, courage, humility, and faith. And God used those qualities to change the direction of the story. There is another important lesson here. Abigail did not control Nabal's character. She could not make him wise. She could not make him humble. But she could control how she responded. That is important for us. You cannot control every person around you. You cannot control what people say about you. You cannot control whether someone misunderstands you. You cannot control every unfair situation. But with God's help, you can control your response. Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turns away wrath. Abigail demonstrated that principle before it became a verse many people would memorize. Her wisdom turned away destruction. And eventually, God dealt with Nabal. David did not have to take revenge. God handled the situation. That is one of the deepest lessons from Abigail's story. When you trust God with justice, you don't have to become consumed by revenge. Maybe you're facing a situation right now where someone hurt you. Maybe someone said something unfair about you. Maybe someone treated you badly. Your first reaction might be anger. But before you respond, ask yourself, will this response make me more like Christ? Am I protecting my character or protecting my pride? Am I seeking wisdom or simply reacting emotionally? Can I trust God with this situation? Abigail reminds us that one wise response can change the direction of an entire situation. Your words can calm a conflict. Your wisdom can protect someone. Your courage can stop something from becoming worse. And your faith can remind others that God is still in control. But there is something even deeper. Abigail's story points us toward a greater kind of wisdom. The wisdom that chooses peace. The wisdom that refuses revenge. The wisdom that trusts God's justice. The wisdom that values character more than winning an argument. James 1:19 says we should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That is not weakness. That is spiritual strength. The world often teaches us that strength means getting the last word. Jesus teaches us that strength can also mean self-control. The world says get even. Jesus says love your enemies. The world says protect your pride. Jesus teaches humility. The world says react. God says seek wisdom. So maybe the question isn't, how can I win this situation? Maybe the better question is, how can I honor God in this situation? Abigail understood something David almost forgot. Your future is too important to sacrifice because of one moment of anger. Don't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. Don't let someone else's foolishness pull you into foolishness. Don't let someone else's anger determine your character. And don't forget who holds your future. Abigail walked into a dangerous situation carrying wisdom, and she walked away having prevented destruction. Her story reminds us that sometimes the strongest person isn't the one who fights. Sometimes the strongest person is the one who knows when not to fight. So when anger rises, pause. When conflict begins, pray. When someone hurts you, seek wisdom. When you feel like getting revenge, remember that God sees everything. And when you don't know what to do, ask God for wisdom. Because one wise decision today can protect the person you become tomorrow. Abigail's story is not just about a woman who stopped David. It is about a woman who understood that God's purposes were bigger than the crisis of the moment. And that is the message for us. Don't allow today's anger to destroy tomorrow's calling. Trust God. Choose wisdom. Speak with grace. Walk in courage. And leave room for God to work. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe Sight Kids and Niños con Vision.